Good morning everybody and welcome back to the painting channel. Today I'm going to be doing a little watercolour. It's a bit of a play around. I just wanted to do a bit of a rural scene across the Romney Marshes with some trees and a little barn in there. So let's jump straight in and see what happens. Hope you enjoy it and hope you get something from it. And if you do at the end, maybe you give this a little like, a little thumbs up. And if you're not a subscriber, then maybe you'll just hit that subscribe button. I am desperately trying to grow my channel, so if you're watching this and you're not already subscribed to my channel, please do me the courtesy of subscribing. It costs you nothing. It'd be fantastic, and you also get to know when I upload more videos in the future. And yeah, as I said, let's get straight into this and see what happens. Right, it's a fairly simple drawing, and I'm going to put a lot more into the foreground. So let's just see how we put these barns in. Very quick. Lovely lot of blues and sort of violets suggested in the shadows and what have you on this long, it's a very long barn actually. I'm not quite sure what it is or what it's used for, but we're going to put that in there. There's some sort of building on the back which I can't quite see. I'm not too worried about it, and a nice little section through there. There is a darker doorway or big barn door at the front there, and then there is the side of another one, but actually that's got a much more like a Dutch roof in a sense. It's lower too, so I'm going to take that out. I made it a little bit too high there. Let's just take that angle down a little bit to there, something like that. I still got it too high. Come on, get a grip. There you go. Let's just take it to there and run that into there like so. I think that's probably a little better. And that will come down, and we will got a great big sliding doorway which is way open on that side too there. So we got the two, something like that. Alright, and I don't really want to labour this. There's a little pole there which we can stick in, and I better change that roof. It doesn't quite look correct, so let's just come down here and down through like so, and then let's put our door in. I think we can get away with that. May even take that out a little further than I have. I don't like using the eraser too much on a piece of watercolour paper because it can affect the surface if you keep sort of going into it, as it were. So try and keep your drawing as crisp and clear as you can. Now I'm just going to put in a suggestion of a nice big tree here, of which there is. There are some other buildings down this way. Now I want to put in the second big tree, which is as big as this one here, and let's put that in and suggest that there. Now, as for the rest of it, well, I'm going to put in a smaller shrub there. I'm going to take the houses out of the equation. I don't think they bring anything to the picture. There is a little shed there which we can utilize that and put that in. It doesn't, that is fine. That looks okay, and we can actually put something there. We could put a little shadow across there to give it a bit of definition. It's not actually in the reference, but that doesn't really matter because there's a cast on this one here, this tree. There's a bit of distance information there which we can put in, not a problem. There is only one problem that I can see, and that is I've come downhill and I hadn't meant to. So let's just take these barns through. Let's just, before we go any further, let's give this a little bit of ground that it's sitting on, something like that. Now we can put in our trees, and our second one is only a small difference in area, but I had, what made it worse is I had that shed way down, and it is quite small, so it's going to be in there, and we're going to put in, I might even put it in a little bit with a bit of a roof there, something like that, or not. We'll see. I don't know. I don't think it's actually sort of doing much for the picture at all, so I'm going to probably leave it out altogether. There is another bush and shrub there, and that's really all that part of the background. There is one or two areas here with a couple of trees behind, and again out through here there's another lot, Okay, and then we've got some other big old tree coming in here, which is casting a huge great shadow, which I want to really bring to part of this picture. I'm going to take that barn just a little further along to there, something like that, and then we've got this nice sort of shadow coming down. It's cast all the way through there and along there like so, and that's a lovely cast shadow which we can utilize. The ground dips at this point, and there are one or two. There is another building there which I really can't make out. I'm just going to suggest a sort of another building through here. Can't quite work it out, but it will be there. We can, I think there's a bit of a house or something there. There's a big old window in the background there. We can put that in. Something not too dissimilar to that. I think that works. Okay. Right, now then, this foreground matter is more important. This is all about the barn, I do appreciate. And there's not too much of a sky, but we can actually do that. And we can actually work that in some form, give it a little bit more interest. But here are a couple of very heavy diagonal lines, or semi, they're almost horizontal. But they can, if you're not careful, they can block the viewer from moving forward. So let's just put those in. So one through here, and there's a lot of dark green vegetation through this. It's obviously, it is a ditch. It's one of the many ditches that sort of zigzag and go around edges of fields and stuff on the Romney Marsh. And so let's put that one, it sort of disappears and zigzags its way up through there. And then there is a lot of dry reed matter that's going over the top, and I want to try and put that in. Now here is another one. Here is the edge of a field in the foreground, but I'm in very big danger, especially when you mount the picture, that you're going to lose a lot of the information, and therefore it really won't make an awful lot of sense of what's going on. So do I really need to put it in? Well, maybe so, but I don't think so in this case. What I'm going to actually do is I'm going to put some little furrow lines in here which suggest that there is sort of shapes and stuff in the stubbly field. But then I'm going to put in one or two little bits of a bank through here that are more suggestive of a division in the field, and just leave it as a bit of stubble that's growing up there, and nothing more. It doesn't. That way we can walk around it, we can go around it, and there's a lead in. I think we just have to play around with the scene a little bit, just to give it that extra bit that we seek. I'm going to put in some sort of structure there, and on the face of this barn there, I'm going to put that in. Gives it a bit more interest there too. There's a couple of posts through there, and I think I said there was another one sort of down there somewhere. And so we've got a lovely little pastoral scene on the Romney Marshes. Now this really is going to be more about the trees. I lost myself for a second. All about the trees, I hope. That's the idea. It's just to give you a little indication on painting some trees. So I'm going to go straight in, and I'm going to use a fairly large brush. I'm going to use a nice synthetic dagger brush from Rosemary. They're really lovely brushes, and this is a synthetic one. I have got an awful lot of animal hair ones, you know, sable brushes, semi-sable brushes, and as they deteriorate I am moving away for the preference of synthetics. They are really getting good at doing the job of a sable, and although technically you'll probably never be able to fully replace a sable, it will allow you to do quite a bit, and that way you're protecting wildlife and the use of animal hair generally. So right, I'm going to put this wash on. Now for the record, I am using a heavyweight 300-pound hot press paper. Now the reason I'm using a hot press paper, I do love it. It doesn't matter even if you don't. But one of the ways to work with trees is to use a lovely rough paper, and to that end you can just allow the brush to skip around and do what it wants to do. Now I've just come all the way down with that sky, and I'm going to come back in over the top of the whole thing with a little bit more violet in here, just to give that a bit more of a sense of light coming down, and just adding to the wash, basically allowing that coming down, a lovely sense of the wash, and keep that bead working all the way down. And you can take it down into your tree line, that doesn't matter. I've left this part of the barn out, not the roof or just that side. It's catching the light, and I want to try and preserve that and not influence any colour with a blue. And if you want to, you can now change that blue. You can put a bit of a cool green in, which would suggest the field coming through here if you wish to. I am trying to preserve the little spaces here. Just take that back a little bit, and I'm going to put in a wash through here of raw sienna, just coming in through that, through there, like so. Give those reeds a bit of colour, and then back, the same colour can come all the way down through here now into the field, right through into the foreground. Now you can see I've had a little bit of a mishap here, and that's because I'm working in quite a slanted way, and so the only way I'm going to be able to get rid of that is to work a bit fast on this part for a kick-off, and then just go back in, clean brush, just go back in with some more blues across here, and just take those bits out with the brush, working quite fast because this is drying up. And the thing about hot press paper, it will put up with a lot more punishment, and as I've said often, I'm never quite sure if that's because of the fact that it is hot press as opposed to a cold press paper. Maybe it bonds better with the fibres. I really do not know, to be quite honest with you. But I do know that I have sort of given this paper a lot of grief at different times. I'm going to leave that like that, and hopefully that will set itself up nicely. Just going to take this little bit out through here. I don't want that drying up on the paper and giving me a cauliflower or a bleed back in colour. So now I'm just going to set this up, let this dry off, and we will come back in and finish off. Now I do want to get rid of that if I can while I'm talking to you. Just gently tease that little bit out along that roof line. Let that come down, and it will be painted over to a greater degree, but may not be that high. So let's just set that up, and yeah, join you again in a minute when I can work on. Now I want to start looking at the trees in this background, and for that I am going to be using quite a cool green, a lot of cobalt going in there and some aureolin going into that mix. And I want to look at the lighter side, and the light is coming across from this way, and I want to put those areas in first. Now I don't want too much paint, that's just too much paint for me. I want to put in, and I actually want it a lot lighter than that, so let's just go back in, and I just want to allow the brush to skip over areas like this. It's the dagger that works very, very nicely, but I just want to have the suggestion of the tree. So I do want to have little bits of the sky popping through, and it's a lot easier, it has to be said, to do this job on rough paper, because the brush, when it's got a little bit less water in the brush, will skip across quite nicely over the surface of the paper and the molded paper, as it were. So it will give you these lovely sky holes, for want of a better term. And but I decided that I want to play around with this purely in the hot press paper so that I could sort of just skip around and scratch, almost scratch the stuff on. And I'm going to put a bit more of a mix there with a little bit lighter colour, a bit more aureolin in one or two of these. There's a little bit of light. I took out a lot of pigment off of my brush then, just tapping out a little bit off like so, then coming back in and putting in a bit of light through the back of some of these, maybe on this one too. But I don't want to keep going over, because the more I do that, of course, then I actually lose some of those lovely little holes in the tree, as it were, where I can see beyond and through them into the distance, as it were, and I get that lovely sense of light. Alright, I'm just going to come in again with yet another tree, and there's a lot of darker in this piece, so I'm going to come in and make a second mix up, and I'm going to use the aureolin and a lot more cobalt, take off the excess, dry the brush out a little bit, and just scratch it on very, very quickly like so, and it travels all the way along the roof like that. Pretty much I should have stopped a little earlier, but it's the way I've done that. It doesn't matter, I'm not overly worried. It still works, as it were. I'm just going to come down here and make a little bit of a gap between these two trees like so, and then come along. I actually want to make a bit of another mix, so I'm going to come in, I'm going to use some ultramarine violet, a little bit more than that, so a little bit of a weak solution, and I'm going to come back in with that with some aureolin again, and that makes a deeper violety green. And I'm just going to start looking at one or two areas in here, and I think I'm going to put some blue to that too, and I do want to skip around, and I want to leave some holes into this, as it were. Now I'm not as dry brush as I want it to be, but that's my fault. That's, you know, if you do as I've said as opposed to do as I'm telling you to, what I actually have forgotten to do is put a background in. So I'm going to come back very, very quickly, and I'm just going to put in a very suggested quick background in, which I completely forgot. I'm not too worried, because I can actually increase the dark areas of the tree, but it would be nice just to get something in that is suggestive through there, just one or two different bits, and maybe even leave a bit of white space to suggest that there are things going on in the background that I'm not aware of from this point of view. I have, as I've said, left out the sort of houses that were in the background, so I'm just going to put this in and suggest that's coming all the way through where this tree is, so if I leave holes here, they will be picked up there. So that's fine, that's good enough. I'm not unhappy with that. While I've got that colour though, I'm just going to come in and I'm going to put in a first colour on this roof of this barn, and then that can be drying before I proceed on to the next bit. I'm going to put a bit in there too. That's going to be a whole lot darker, but in there for that building, and there, because that's in the shade. And I will just leave this for the moment so I can actually go back in on that, so it's not a big deal. What I can do is I'm going to use some of this green just to come through here initially with a suggestion of the contour in the field, or the edge or the bank of the ditch, or whatever happens to be there. I'm going to put that in like so and let that dry too. And then while we've got it, we will just come in and we will do very much the same here. We will just put a very, very scratchy base colour in just to suggest what's going on there with that, and just leave things to settle down. That's got to dry off, and I'll join you in a sec when I've just given this a little bit of a blow with the hairdryer, and we'll carry on. Okay, I'm just going to change brush, not that I need to, but I'm just going to continue the same process of painting the tree with a different type of brush, so that you get to see how that would be. Now I'm just using a fairly standard, I think it's probably a number 4, something like that, round brush. This is a sable one. It's one of the many that I do own, and as I say, as they wear out, then of course they'll be replaced. But I'm going to go back in and I'm going to mix up a darker green now, but it's going to be quite a cool green, so I'm actually going to use some ultramarine blue this time, and I'm going to add some aureole into that and just see how that looks. I think I want to actually add some violet into there and make that a little bit darker in a sense, and come in with some of our dark areas in here. I think that works. And I'm just tapping now. I'm just actually tapping shapes in with this tree in that sense. I need to make the darks darks and the lights still light, and still maintain a level of what I would call these sky holes popping through. So I'm just going to come back in with a little bit of light in one or two places on this big tree, and almost you can sort of tap it around and scratch it like that. But as I said earlier, this really is down to choice, and also better achieved on a rough paper. You might be asking, what the heck didn't I use a rough paper in the first place? Well, it is a very good question. I perhaps should have done, but I chose the smooth paper. I do love working with it, and I do follow artists out there that work it, and they do a remarkable job with this paper. And it got me into using it a long time back, and I've never regretted that. I want to put a bit of light running through there. If that will allow it over that blue that's been put in, certainly will pick up some of the blue, but it may just allow me to come back in and put enough sort of light, just punch that through there like so, and then that will work against all the darks that I'm going to be putting in there towards the end of this. I'm going to perhaps a little bit of light punching through some of this here, and leave that be, and then let's go back in with this middle green on this big tree up here. And I am scratching around again as I can. Actually, I don't really need to on this tree, because this one is a very great big I don't know what it is, yew tree, but it's very, very dense. So I am going to pretty much give it the full colour, but then I will leave some of the edges that will remain sort of allowing some of the light to pop through. I'm going to put a bit of dark line through here, which is suggestive of something in here, a little bit of shadows through that part of the field, maybe a hedge or something there. And I did say there was yet another tree which we're going to put in just here, and let that come down. Quite a dense situation on this one also, like that. I think we'll get away with that. Okay, now I'm going to come in with some of this dark matter again. So more violet going in and more aureole in, and let's just see where that leads. Actually, I also want a bit of blue in there. I'm going to put some cobalt to that too. Just check it out, because I did like this value in here. It's very dark, and it really makes those beautiful contrasts. So let's just put that in and just leave one or two areas like so, and let some of that come down, and just tap away with the edge of the brush and let that come back in and give me some shade and shadow through here. And there's a big light dark area which we can suggest that's coming down, and that will isolate this lovely light bit of green. We can actually put something else in here and suggest that there are trees further back, and again leaving the edge, using the negative space to identify and throw out that little bit of light in the front there. Just one or two darks in here, just play around with that. And now we've got a very dark part of this here, so I want to try and leave as a point of counter change, where I can leave this light coming through here, which will then throw out that lovely edge of the barn. I'm just going to tap in some more darks in one or two places, not all of it, not all over it either, just in one or two, and just tap off into the sky, give it a broken edge like that, and one or two this way. The tree has got many facets, but of course the darks are a little less on this side where it's hitting the light, and a whole lot more on this side, of course, where there's very much light, less light getting past and around to the back end. And the tree does go round. You know, people often make the mistake of making a tree that is very, very flat in terms to look at it, and it's really not right. So let's just mix up some more colour, more blues. And that's quite a nice deep dirty green, and put that in through there. And let's look at some of this. Now, I did put this tree in a little bit wrong, but I'm not too worried by it, if I'm honest with you. I'm going to put in maybe a couple of little stems, and I've flattened out the brush. You can see how that round brush has become quite a chisely flat brush, and I'm just going to scratch in one or two areas like that that are suggestive of a more open form tree that's growing up through there. Let's put a few darks in, something like that, and that gives us a nice finish to that part. One or two areas here that are a bit darker, and you can bring one or two of those down. I know the sky does come along to the top of the roof, but I haven't done that, so I can't change that. I'm going to sort of just put some dark shadow into this part and try and break that out through and make that look as though it's sort of got lights and darks and little areas that are popping into shadow and revealing the light as the leaves turn towards the sun, leaving one or two light areas that pop through to the background and sky. And not, if you get a little bit few of them, then just leave a few more open gaps, and even if it's slightly got the green or yellow in it, don't worry too much, because the eye will still see it as a whole. In a sense, it's not so overtly the other colour that you can't think that it is a bit of the sky. So I'm just going to put that in. I'm going to bring a little bit more of the mid colour in, and a little bit of blue into that. Just want to come back in with a few middle values through here, so that it's not just a big leap from one to the other, like that. And just wanted to up into the sky as that breaks out that way. Give it a bit more shape as well. I just want to bring some of these up and give this a little bit of a change there, and coming through here. And leave a little bit of sky through there, that works. So let's just come back in. Just going to scratch a few marks into here very, very quickly. And this is, you know, painting quite fast. Well, for me it's quite fast anyway. So hopefully you're getting something from that. But yeah, it is just a very quick painting of some trees and a bit of farm ground. I'm going to bring that all the way down to there, and it does get quite dark down there. Let's come in with a bit more violet and violet blue, which is the ultramarine violet, of course. And put a bit of phthalo green into that and give that quite a dark, shady colour through there, and up into some of these areas right at the bottom here. We'll change the look of the tree a little bit here, but it gives a nice green variant to all those others that we have been using thus far. Take that down through there, and it's going to go into shade, but we're going to bring some of this up into the form of the tree here, and leave quite a few holes if we can, not just for the sky but also for the lighter parts of this tree, which we did try and save. And then we've got this big meaty tree, and I'm going to put in a lot of phthalo, a lot of violet, and let's just give that a really dark colour. But I think it needs a little bit warming up, so I'm going to actually add a little bit of transparent orange into that. Come back in and let's just see what sort of green we've made. I think that will work, and we can just pop that in and pop that into some of the negative spaces of this one, so that we sense that it's in front of the other tree, and it comes down really heavily. So we're going to put that in and let that come all the way down through here, almost obliterating some of the barn. Big area here of dark, and let that start rising up into the sky, like so, and off to the side here, a little bit more, a little bit less dark there, so we get the sense of the light is being picked up, and we can actually leave some of this negative space to suggest that there are other things being depicted that we don't necessarily understand or see, but they are nonetheless there. And I'm going to carry on now, and I want to bring in, while this is damp, I want to bring in this lovely bluish shadow, this cast shadow, and I'm going to bring that all the way through here into this roof down in there, like so. And it could be a little more violet if I'm honest, so I'm going to put a little bit more violet to that mix while it's still wet, and just change the edge a little bit more. And it gives us that dark part of the roof, and we've got the light part of the roof, of course, and we're going to take that dark all the way into whatever is beyond this building in here. So that comes in there. Not quite sure where on things start and stop, and I want to put in a little bit of sepia just into some of that mix, just through here. Makes it a little bit darker and, you know, cavernous as well, a little way to go. Now what I can't do here is put the other value in yet, so I want to come in with a little bit of yellow and a little bit, that's a little bit too much yellow for the need, but a lot more of the raw sienna as a simple wash through, and tap, just the merest tap to cool it down of the violet. I don't want too much, but I don't want it so overtly yellow. I want it sort of in that area. Now a lot of water, and I'm just going to take it and sweep it all the way into here, and there is the side of my barn. And if I want to suggest some of the boards, I can just give it a bit of a staining so that that will just come down and dry where it wants to be. I don't want to do it too much because I want the striking area between there and this shadow once that area is dry. And that is all I'm going to do. And I want to suggest the reeds. Now the reeds, I'm going to use some burnt sienna, and I just want to skim across the top here and suggest that these are the reeds, and they are the tops of the reeds. The tops are got those lovely little brownish flicks to the tassels, the ends, whatever they are, the little flower heads on them. So I just want to put those in and suggest that just very, very quickly, nothing too serious. And I'm going to come back in while this is still drying up. We are going to come back very, very quickly, I hope, and put some lighter greens in one or two places here, just to put that over and give a suggestion of other things. And that's pretty much all I want to do with that at this point. Right, so let that dry too. Now while we're waiting, let's come in with some violet back in. Got a little bit dirtied up, but I'm not too worried about that because we are going to put in the ends of our barns. So I'm going to take that all the way down there and leave that little bit of light there and take that into that other barn, just through there, down through the side, across the doorway, because we're going to add to that doorway, and then give our nice edge and sharp darks, which got to be a bit darker than I've allowed. So I'm going to punch a little bit of indigo into the far edge of this barn. And I don't want to go too mad with it because I need darks for the doors too. So having done that, I'm going to just lift out just a little bit through there. I don't mind that little bit of light there actually, that's quite fun because it's almost suggesting there's something. No, I'm going to take it out. It would have been great to have left it in a way because it does suggest that there is something pushing through there. But I'm going to take it out. And I'm using some of the negative space that you can almost see the base of the barn, but you've got these little tips of the reeds that are sort of messing up the view, as it were. I'm going to take that down to there, give that a nice edge into that shape, to there and down, and leave that as it is. And while we're doing it, I'm just going to put one or two cooler marks in through here. We're not quite sure what we're seeing, but we are seeing something, and maybe one or two other marks of distant trees here, maybe a taller one at the back there somewhere, just to suggest there's even more aerial perspective happening with that. I can now come back in and put some darks. I'm going to use some indigo and the lemon for this, and that gives me a cool, lovely distant but dark green. And I just want to come in and suggest another layer on some of these, and this is going to be even darker still. So let's just put in some of that on this side. It's quite a heavy tree. As I say, I really don't know what it is. There is a real heavy one. Now again, leave some little bits and pieces at the bottom that are suggestive, and you're using the negative spaces to suggest that there are other areas, levels of growth of something that's going on there. I'm coming back in with a bit more light, but a bit more violet into that. And let's just take some of these up into the tree. They're quite bluish, but I think that's possibility the photo is a little bit that way cast. I'm not going to worry too much about that. And there is a definite sort of funny growth to this tree, but it is very dense. It has a lovely shape to it. A bit of indigo back in there to make that a bit darker. One or two places up in the top. And bring that through very heavy in there, but lessen it as it comes across, obviously, because it's going to look a bit silly. It needs to have the light popping in and showing up, and just like that, almost rolling the brush, which is easy to do, and that gives us that shape. Now my tree is a little bit thinner than that on the reference. I'm not too worried about that. I could come out here if I want to and just give that a little bit more shape, rounded shape, especially up in here. I think my actual original pencil line suggests that anyway, so I can actually take this tree out this way and give it a bit more, just a little less definite through there. Can't see too much of sky through it. A bit more blue. You can see little bits of sky at the top here, but no more. Okay. And I want to come in with a bit of more aureolin into that. Not that much though. Aureolin is very, very cooling, so be aware of how bright that will make that. I'm just going to come in with one or two different greens just to suggest that there is light, but it's a little bit of a different value of green going in there. That's fine, I'm not too worried about that now. And a bit of dark, so we come back in with some more darks, bit of that, and actually suggest a different one. Let's use some Indian yellow, and let's come back into the base of this tree very quickly. Again, leave some negative spaces so that we can see something going on, and then we can actually add a bit of darker green into this field here. What I'm doing is I'm scratching fairly dry brush. Now the tooth on this paper is very, very fine, but even so, with a dry brush and scratching along this way doesn't do your brush any good. But if you're careful, you won't do too much damage, but you're leaving little areas that are broken by the dryness, and then you're suggesting that it's breaking up. Even more dry brush is breaking up as it comes up the field and loses out to this lovely display of reeds that are growing. And you can then do the same thing as we did here, just tap in little areas that are suggestive there of that sort of shape. But what we've also done is we've left, we can use the negative space here, we can tap little marks in here, and we're using that little light streak, to give an extra layer of something going through the top end of the field. And as we then come forward, we bring in a bit of dark matter into this part of the field. Again, I'm driving the shape of the wedge of this brush like so. I'm breaking up lines and just driving it into some of the area of the reeds. Maybe a little bit lighter greens in one or two places, a little bit fresher, and just tapping in some like so, like that. And just a little bit to finish off into this field here, because we said it's another contour, so I want to dry that in there and then let this come along. I'm using two green areas, two different greens out of the pan. Some are fresher and lighter and brighter, and others are less so. They're darker, duller, and they add weight. Wrong blue. And they add weight to the whole thing. Let's use some Indian yellow into that, deepen that really down where this is getting dark into the gully here. A few taps while this is still damp on top, and it will blend and spread quite nicely, but it adds more weight in the foreground to your painting, leaving this nice crisp edge of the field. And now we have this lovely set of light that's working through the whole of this. But again, naturally, by tapping them this way, you will leave little bits of green unpainted, and that automatically looks like lighter grass in front of that is creating those marks. And you're suggesting you're not actually painting grass, you're not painting anything at all, you're just tapping colour. And the viewer, including yourself, when you look at this, your brain will join all the dots you need moving forward. A little bit more brash with this one in the foreground, just give that a suggestion that there's more rubbish growing in here, grasses, whatever, and like so, and just literally play around with these shapes. And maybe don't want to overdo it, very tempting to get overdoing it, but it's just literally a little bit of dark in the bottom here, and you are painting that negative space like so. And that's all it needs to be done. Very, very simple. Okay, now having said very, very simple, let's come back in here and let us put in this cooler green that we had over here just to finish this edge of this field off here. So again, we can use the edge or there, leave all of that, just come back in and suggest that this field has got other things going on. Let's tap a little bit of mark here. You can make another one that comes through there, and little taps, little suggestive marks that you're not quite sure where the field ends and other things start. And that's all I wanted to do, is just to leave that and let your mind or your brain join all the dots that I need you to join moving forward in this painting. I quite like the way that's gone. That's quite good. I'm quite happy with that. Now the last thing I do need to do is put quite a dark, but not that dark. That's quite a heavy dark. So I'm going to use a little bit less pigment, a little bit more water, but very, very carefully just come in here now and place our door in the barn so that there's a little bit of section that we can walk into, and another one in here which is going to be about the same size as the first one. So let's just put that in, and that comes down the side of this object that's sitting outside. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to use a little bit of phthalo blue just to put that in there and give that lovely little fresh blue colour, where it may be catching a bit of light there, but we're going to tap a little bit of dark in here to mess it up a little bit, but you can see that there is something happening at that point. Okay, that's done, sorted. Now I'm going to use a fine rigger. I can find, or maybe not so much a fine rigger, let's just use a very fine small brush. I happen to have that close to hand, and I just, oh, that sounded a bit scratchy. I've used it for so long. Okay, I just want to put in a value of dark, but not the pure indigo, that is too coarse. I'm going to actually add some alizarin to that, make a little bit of a softer violet. Just check this brush before I use it, it's going to be doing what I want it to do. And there is a little part of the barn that runs along through there, and I just want to draw that in very quickly, something like that, and it gives a sort of base to, or foundation to, the barn. There is maybe some sort of thing going along there down the side, and just a suggestion of a ridge on the edge. So we've got a little bit of ridge there running along the barn. Do I need to do any of that anyway? Well, there is that lovely post up there, so I'm going to put that dark in, but this time I will put more orange into that mix to make it a warmer dark, just so I can see a differential, and put that little post in through there. I actually might just suggest one or two areas like, let's just put a post in there. It just makes it a little bit more feasible, a bit of ground, a bit of land, a little bit of something going on. Maybe one further back there, something like that. Maybe even one through there that you can see. Just man-made things, they just help the whole scene. Let's put an edge down there to suggest that that is something going on there. I don't know quite what that is. Some sort of vat or something sitting outside. Let's just put a bit more dark down the edge of this, like so. Maybe a little shape under there, give that edge a bit of a ridge to the roof, and the same with that one, just to suggest that. I'll soften that off a little bit too aggressive. And maybe use a bit of violet in there just to add that back. And I'm going to dab it, not with a clean piece of paper, just going to dab it. I don't want anything working against me moving forward. Okay, that's fine. Right, now the last thing is that I do want to put this lovely violety shadow in, and a bit of indigo, and let's see where that goes. Let's put that in here, down there like so, and this really just, for me, just finishes the whole thing off there and into there like that. Okay, and maybe just maybe a little bit more dark in there, suggestive that there's something that we can't quite make out, but is sort of in the dark there, just coming out there a little bit, and adding to that in there. And take a little bit of that away, just lessen it. There you go. Okay, so now we've got our sunlight, we've got our barn, and I think we're done. I don't think this needs to do any more. I'm just going to put a little signature down here out the way, and we are finished. There you go. One, I hope not too long a watercolour for you. I hope you've got something from it, and as I said at the very beginning, if you've enjoyed it, click the thumbs up button and add your comments below. It's great. You're more than welcome to do that, and I'll answer each and every one of them. And if you're not a subscriber, please, as I said earlier, please subscribe to the channel. I am trying to grow my YouTube audience as fast as I can, so that I can reach more people and entertain more people and show more people how they may help their own painting endeavours. And with all that said, every week, twice a week, there are live streams from me, both in oil and in watercolour, one of each week, on a Monday and a Friday evening at 7 p.m. That's GMT, Greenwich Mean Time, and I think that's around about 1 o'clock-ish, something like that, in America somewhere, depending what state you live in. But all over the world, people are tuning in. So yes, maybe fix a date yourselves to join me. You don't have to do it every time. And if you do, and you want to come in on the chat, just announce yourself and I'll welcome you and just say hi. That'd be great to know that you're watching. And so, as I say, that's every Monday, every Friday at 7 p.m. GMT. And if you want a lot more from me, I know I keep banging on about this, but if you do want a lot more from me, then take a look over on my Patreon page. Now, the reference to this painting here will be posted on my Patreon, and even if you're not a patron, you're free to download the reference for yourself to use for learning from only. and you're more than happy to do that, and that's why I put it there for you. But if you, whilst you're there, if you want to take a look at the patrons that I have help support my efforts to keep making more films, primarily for them, of course, because they are giving me a little something out of their pockets each month to aid me to do that, and then also to do more for YouTube. So if you fancy getting involved and giving yourself access to so much more content, and also having a much more direct access for me to help you personally, then have a look at the Patreon. And if you want to get involved with that and help support my efforts, you'll be so welcome. And it'd be great to have you on board. And we are growing. It's very slow, but we are growing. And we have a very special Facebook page for all the patrons to get involved with the two, sharing their work and getting help from me and from each other. It's really a nice little community that is growing. So take a look at that, and if you want to get involved and become part of that, thank you very much in advance. So with all that said, next Friday a new video, and tonight, don't forget, there will be a live stream, which will be not tonight, yes, tonight there will be a live stream in Watercolour, so that's Friday. So join me at 7 if you're about, and take care, and I'll see you all in the next video. Happy painting, take care, stay safe, catch you all soon. Bye bye.